people, is it weird for a 30-year-old to date a 21-year-old? If so, why? Here's one data point, my story. A male, when I was 34, the younger sister of a good friend of mine, fell for me. She was 21. I wanted nothing to do with her. To me, the age gap was a bridge too far, not to mention she was my friend's sister. Nothing good could come of this. In retrospect, I often said my father would have talked me out of it, but my father was already gone. Nobody in my circle discouraged me from dating her. My friend, her brother, gave it his blessing. His wife was also on board, going so far as to set up a date for us. We dated and got married when she was 24 and I was 37. Holy crap, was she freaking immature. She never wanted me as a husband. She wanted a younger, smarter, cooler, more athletic, handsome father who was also an excellent baseball player and better cook than her dumb old man. She shied away from every decision, every single tough situation, and bailed at the first sign of any strife. Marriage lasted 9 months. My advice is this. Morally and ethically, you're in the clear, but if you're trying to find a woman to make a future with, find a woman, not a girl. Story 2. I don't think age gap is a big deal if it's a legal and mature relationship. Like people who get bent out of shape if a 60-year-old dates a 30-year-old. They're both legal and consenting adults trying to live their own lives. There's nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't need your input. When they were 30, they weren't even born yet. Argument means absolutely nothing to me if they met and consented at a legal age where the younger of the two was allowed to make that decision for themselves. Yep, the timing is what matters most. Story 3. I wouldn't personally do it. When I was 30, I dated someone who was 23 and it was awful. The maturity or life experience gap was very evident. 21 would just be the same. Two people at vastly different points in life who likely want to experience different things. And at least for the 30-year-old, maybe not experience some things again. I'd probably want a different pace of life. Not saying it couldn't work, but I think the outcome would be vastly different if it was 31 and 40. Story 4. There will always be two opposite answers to your question because people are different. They have different life experiences, different values, and different lifestyles. And for the same reason, my answer to your question is no, it's not weird. Some people at the age of 21 may be much more mature than others in their 40s, so it's absolutely not about numbers. If you feel good together, why would you care if it is weird to some random people? Personal example. I met my future husband when I was 19 and he was 30. I don't think I've ever felt that age gap. Yes, it wasn't easy at the beginning, especially considering the fact that we lived in different cities and it was a combination of age difference and distance, but we worked it out. I don't believe in relationships that do not require effort from both sides. Regardless of whether you have an 11-year difference or no age difference at all, it's all about whether you want to be with this person or not. We celebrated a 10th wedding anniversary in June, by the way. Story 5. From personal experience, I did not think it was weird at the time. I was 22 dating a 31-year-old. But now, as a 31-year-old myself, I see it as a problem. The life experience from 22 to 31 is vastly different. I also feel like, as a 22-year-old, it was easier for me to be manipulated by someone who was older and had more dating experience. I would question why the 30-year-old can't date someone closer to their own age. There are probably reasons. Story 6. Do what works for you. But at that age, there's generally a huge difference in maturity. When I was 32, I was newly single, and while I originally had my Bumble set to 21 plus, but that quickly changed. If at that age you aren't recognizing people roughly 10 years younger than you as basically adult children, then open your eyes. It's a very different age demo. This is a generalization. For those of you that were in similar situations and had a great situation come out of it, great. What I'm saying is that this does feel a bit predatory, or at the very least, that the older person is in a state of arrested development and maybe needs to grow up. Story 7. I've done a similar age gap, 19 when I was 28 or 29. It didn't work because our lifestyle was way too different and we had different priorities and a big maturity gap. She was partying and going wild every day, financially very irresponsible, a cheat, very vain, and wanted to quit school to do corn. Her being really hot was the only thing that she had going for her. I was working and going to school for my doctorate full time, so my weekdays felt like suffering and I wanted one of my weekend days off just to rest and run errands or catch up on stuff. She constantly wanted me to take her out. Lasting 3 months was a miracle. Even if she'd been an 11 out of 10, I wouldn't have been able to endure another day. She got a huge allowance and was spoon-fed everything by parents, so the maturity wasn't there. But she likes older guys because they were more emotionally mature to her. Story 8. As a 22-year-old, I'm usually pretty creeped out when someone older than 26 flirts with me. There are a few times it wasn't like that, but in hindsight, I chalk it up as leftover trauma from old men online when I was a kid. At 21, the brain isn't fully developed. Are there some 21-year-olds who are more mature than some 30-year-olds? Yeah, but they still do not have the same amount of experience a 30-year-old has. In the US, a 21-year-old can hardly buy alcohol. They're likely in their second or third year of college. They're less likely to have a stable career. If they have kids, the child is likely only a toddler, or they probably don't have a kid. The median age when women become mothers is apparently about 26 years old. It isn't really my business who a person dates, but it's weird. I would absolutely side-eye it. It's better than dating an 18-year-old, but it's still weird. It's even more weird if the 30-year-old is specifically looking for someone younger. If it ends up happening by accident, I can almost understand it, but once it becomes a pattern, it is a red flag in my opinion. Story 9. I'm around 30 now, and when I think about what I was like as a 21-year-old kid, I genuinely cringe. You change so much during early adulthood because your prefrontal cortex is still developing till around mid to late 20s, and you generally have a completely different outlook in life. Things you want for your future, yourself, different political views maybe. You just grow up a lot in your 20s, in my opinion. I think the age gap itself is completely fine as long as both are consenting adults, but the difference in maturity is just way too big. Also, in my experience, oftentimes older people, often men, tend to date in significantly younger age groups because they can find a suitable partner in their own age demographic because they are immature themselves. People their own age aren't as naive anymore as a 21-year-old maybe is and don't want to put up with their crap. That doesn't necessarily have to be true for everyone, but so far in my experience, it has. Story 10. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. I'm inclined to say it's usually weird, but it's not necessarily weird all the time. But as an almost 30-year-old, I'd feel weird. I work at a university and we got a lot of undergrad workers or volunteers, so I'm constantly around college juniors or seniors that are 20 to 22. It's not like we don't get along or that I don't think they're attractive, but they just feel a little too immature. And we are definitely not concerned about the same things in life. I'm getting married soon and probably want to have kids within the next 5 years. I'd feel super weird doing that with a 21-year-old and expecting them to make grown-up decisions like being a mother. I know for certain that I was not a mature adult at that age. Also, I talk about old stuff from my childhood and they'll have no idea what I'm talking about and it makes me feel old. 8 or 9 years is a bigger generation gap than I thought. I guess, hypothetically, if I met a 21-year-old who wasn't a student and had a decent job and stuff and was independent from their parents, I might feel less weird about a relationship, but I probably still would. I have a little sister-in-law that I met when she was 13 and she's 21 now. I feel like I'm always going to view people her age as kids. Story 11. As a 32-year-old male, for me, that's a yes. It's weird. Mostly because of how immature people tend to be at 21. Adding to that would be these things. Even if they're mature for their age, there's a massive gap in life experience and a high chance of the 21-year-old growing apart from their partner based on wanting to experience other things that other 21-year-olds are doing. They're both adults, though, so they can do what they want. But there are a lot of common sense reasons you shouldn't do it. Story 12. Not all 4 years in a human's life are the same, and the years 21 to 25 are where a lot of growing and maturity takes place. Now, I want to preface this response or rant by saying I'm not specifically condoning or encouraging big age gaps in relationships. I'm just using examples to try and demonstrate my points. I do, however, think that two happy adults, 18 plus, should be allowed to be happy. If there are no signs of mistreatment, then shut up and stay out of it. Now, with that said, X time period is where a lot of growing and maturity takes place. That's basically what they say about 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and 15 to 20 and 25 to 30. It's always a lot of growing up and maturity takes place between X and Y years, so it's bad. A 17-year-old dating a 20-year-old is some kind of huge taboo, but if it's 18 and 21, it's fine. But if it's 18 and 24, it's some kind of taboo, but if it's 19 and 25, it's fine. The whole system is completely arbitrary. The guy who wrote the quote is absolutely right. Not every set of 4 years in a human's life is the same, and not even the same between two individuals. Someone can be 15 and overall be more mature than a 40-year-old who never grew up. There are 50-year-olds who barely know how to tie their own shoes and can't cook for themselves and have to be taken care of by the people around them. And 17-year-olds who work hard and manage finances while being a single parent still going to school, while also making sure the child has a good upbringing and good home-cooked meals. And you shouldn't even have to guess which one of these two most people would think of as more responsible, more mature, or grown. Frankly, we all grow up completely different. Even two people who are exactly the same age can have completely different growth and maturity levels. So I honestly don't get this obsession over age gaps myself. It's just Arbitrary, conform to my whims, or I'll shame you nonsense. The only age-related question that really matters is, are they young? And a follow-up, age-loosely related question of, how much, if any, risk is there of cruel behaviors like power leverage, etc.? If someone is young and dating their 30-year-old teacher, that's a huge problem. The partner is considerably older, which is of dubious value in determining anything because, as established, two people can have completely different maturity levels independent of their age. But more importantly, they are in a position of power over the younger party, and there's a strong possibility of some level of power leverage, etc. involved. This is the problem that matters, in my opinion. It shouldn't matter if there's a 10-year or 20-year or 30-year age gap between two individuals who are 18 plus, old enough to think and decide for themselves and who may very well be in completely the same or similar maturity or growth levels. It's frankly always baffled me that we treat fresh teens like adults and start dumping responsibilities on them like they're adults. But then they're not actually adults with full rights over themselves until 18. But wait, that's still not enough. Once they're 18, they're not actually adults until 21. Oh wait, they need a few years of college or a job to be an adult, so they're not actually adults until 25. Oh wait, they're not actually adults till they've settled down in their life at 30. There's always more growing and maturity that needs to happen. That's the most absurd case of goalpost shifting I've ever seen that no one seems to acknowledge. Story 13. It's weird when significantly older guys date women in the 18 to 24 year age range. The older the guy is, the more it comes across as if he can't attract a woman of quality in his own age group, so he has to date women who really don't know any better in the grand scheme of life. Until you get into a really old guy with a 20-plus year younger wife, then it's clear that it's a trophy wife situation. Is a 9-year age gap weird? Not when it's a 28-year-old and a 37-year-old, or a 31-year-old and a 40-year-old. It's her age being so young that makes this more of an eye raiser. People are all different. Some people are more mature and some are more juvenile. Is she just as worldly, accomplished, and mature as you at 30? Or is it more that you are matching her level of maturity and lifestyle at 21? Or somewhere in between? I don't know where you are in the world. Most people in their low 20s here are more immature and less independent than my age group was at 14 to 16. I'm 41. Here, 21-year-olds are still dependent on parents, live at home, and don't own cars. They even have a driver's license at all. They don't know how to cook and don't have full-time jobs. Basically what teens used to be, except they just live on their phones. In the end, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you're both happy, then have at it. Story 14. Yes, it is. You're at different stages in life. 21-year-olds are trying to figure themselves out and are fresh on the adulting scene still, and still figuring out who they are without family hanging over them. 30-year-olds are more established, should have a decent understanding on how to be an adult and who they are as a person. I'm saying this as someone who was the 20-year-old going on 21 with a 30-year-old. It was the worst relationship of my life. I had no clue what I was doing or who I was, and I felt so much pressure from this older man to conform to his likings and be a good girlfriend and be a 1920s bunny that I kept pushing my happiness aside until I was to the point of literally wanting to end it all. Please don't do it. Just focus on your happiness and run. Story 15. It's really only weird to young people. I don't think it's weird, but I also wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it because of how immature that person would be. If they were mature, or at least on my level, it might feel different, but that would be rare. It's only 9 years. But 9 years is half your life? Yeah, it seems like a lot. If you two get married and have a family, it won't seem weird or a big gap when you're 59 and she's 50. If that 21-year-old is mature enough and you're clicking, give them a chance. You never know. Forget what judgmental people have to say or think. You know why? Because screw them. That's why. Story 16. Not going to lie, when I was 27 or 28, nothing seemed cooler to me than dating some hot 21-year-old. But that was at a point in my life when I just finished college and still wasn't really making professional money, and I was trying to cling to a frat boy lifestyle that had long since passed me by. I had an epiphany when I was 29 and went to go visit a younger sibling at our college campus and was called sir like a dozen times. Every single person outside of that relationship thinks it's very weird, so it probably is. However, this is 100% the creation of women online. I used to do liquor distribution, and a lot of my business was selling alcohol to bars in the gayborhood. And I promise you, you're much more likely to see a significant age gap in a relationship between two gay men than you are between a man and a woman. But you never hear anyone tell a 35-year-old gay man that he's abusing power dynamics for dating a much younger man. So I totally get the point of people who think that it's weird, but it's also really weird to focus on it too much. Consenting adults are allowed to consent. Story 17. Speaking as a young person with a 12-year age gap, I think it's situational. I was forced to grow up and be responsible and mature far too early and don't care about having fun. I'm here for the hard stuff, and so is he, and we get along well. We bring out the best in each other as well as the worst, but he's my best friend. It definitely isn't something that can work for everybody, and it was weird at first for both of us, especially him, but it's doable with the right people. Story 18. I'm 31 and my boyfriend is 22. They've been dating for 2 years and knew each other for a whole year as friends before that. My entire life, I dated older guys because I like mature men. My boyfriend is the most mature young man I've ever met. They have a lot of the same hobbies, play the same games, listen to the same music, and have the same long-term life goals, etc. When I met him, I was out of an 8-year cruel relationship, and I didn't really get to be young and have friends, so when I met my now boyfriend, I was in a very 20-year-old mindset. I think not being able to have friends before made me a little socially stunted. Some people had problems with me dating someone 9 years younger than me and assumed I was taking advantage of him. In reality, even though I'm older, I find myself being the one taken care of emotionally by my boyfriend in a way I've never experienced. And anyone who actually knows us, like our friends and family, all agree that we're very compatible and perfect for each other. I think it really just depends on an individual level whether it's an okay relationship or not. For me, it's been the most loving relationship I've ever had. Story 19. I mean, each case is different, but generally, I'm going to say yeah. There's just something not right about the scenario. An individual's life at 21 is vastly different than at 30. At 21, you're likely a student, you're a novice in the workforce, you're just learning who you are, what you like, and finding your footing. At 30, you usually have an idea of who you are, have a more established career, maybe a homeowner, etc. Intellectually, they are just too much of a difference, and I don't know how a 30-year-old would be mentally stimulated by a 21-year-old. Story 20. I think the question you should be asking is, why does the 30-year-old need to date a 21-year-old? Can they not find someone their own age? My oldest is 20 and dating a 26-year-old that literally has no life skills or common sense. The SO is dating someone younger because they're on the same level, maturity-wise. I don't like the age gap, but I know if I say anything about it, it will trigger the "I'm an adult and will do what I want" response. So I will keep my options in that relationship to myself until directly asked by either of them. Story 21. The question itself points out a very common problem. There's a difference between chronological age and maturity level. Even a 20-year age gap may not be strange if the relationship makes sense, much less a 9-year age gap. Are their maturity levels the same? Do they share the same interests, beliefs, and values? Is one clearly taking advantage of the other, or are they genuinely compatible? Asking if it's weird for 30 to date 21 to me means you're more concerned if people will think this is acceptable than it is, are they actually compatible? People will say that the age gap automatically means you're in two different places in life, and while this is often the case, many people are not. If you're in love, age becomes a number. If you're trying to be socially accepted and ensure everyone thinks you are doing the right thing, then yes, that is important. All that being said, many 20-year-olds are way more immature than 30-year-olds, but not every single 20-year-old shares the same maturity level as their peers. Again, age is just a number. There are more factors to consider. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 22. It depends on the specific 21-year-old. For me, most of the time I wouldn't consider it. That said, when I was in my early 30s, I did date someone who was 21. He was perhaps the most intelligent person I'd ever met. I wasn't even physically attracted to him at first. In fact, I remember thinking he was unfortunate looking. Then we talked for hours and suddenly I found him irresistible in every way. I tried to remain mindful of the potential differences that could arise due to the age gap, and we checked in with each other about it regularly. I did feel very self-conscious when we were in public together, which is something I regret in hindsight. I looked very young, and while I was often told I looked young for my age at the time, the age gap was nonetheless obvious to anyone who looked at us. I think a big part of my self-consciousness was due to the fact that we were a gay couple, and a lot of people still view all gay men as perpetrators. I definitely got dirty looks from the people who think all gay men are weird. We often engaged in mild PDA precisely to anger those types of people. Eventually, we stopped dating, but it was amicable, and we have remained friends. He is still one of the most amazing people I've had the privilege to know. Unfortunate looking is crazy. Story 23. When I was 21, I dated a 32-year-old professor. He was more immature than me. Had a gambling problem and lied all the time. He was trying to get me to move away with him to New York to be near his family, and I declined. Good thing I did too, because I found out a lot of horrible things after I left his bum. I'm just glad I was a mature 21-year-old, because he ended up taking one of his sad tricks with him and they both ended up on hard substances. Story 24. To each their own, I say. Questions like these always invoke many opinions, but at the end of the day, it depends on the couple. Some people get really hung up on age gaps and their own rules about it, while others don't care as long as it's legal and consensual. I've seen age gaps of over a decade work better than those closer to their age range. If someone is hung up on the age gap more than the couple's ability to make it work, it is a them problem, no one else's. Story 25. It really depends on the individuals. Brings back a treasured memory. When we were 20, my friend started dating this guy. They were perfect together, and neither asked, "Hey, so how old are you?" Their relationship got pretty intense really fast. I happened to be with him when something came up in conversation that led to the realization he was 9 years older. The absolute shock on both their faces was hilarious to me. Both are absolutely horrified. They just had their 25th anniversary, so, they got over it. Story 26. I would say if two people find that their lifestyle and goals are compatible and they're both legal adults, then it genuinely doesn't matter. In an ideal world, everyone in one age group would be at the same maturity level or at the same place in their lives. But that's not always how it works. Personally, I'm attracted to someone who knows what they want out of life. At my age, 28, a lot of people are kind of starting to figure it out, but someone 10 years my senior is more appealing to me because they've been established for some time. It depends on what the individuals are looking for, in my opinion. Story 27. I'm 29 now, and I don't know what different part of life everyone keeps referencing being at. Sure, I have a degree now, but as someone who doesn't want kids or a house, my life goals of traveling and having fun are the same, if not stronger than when I was 21 because I actually have the money to do it now. I haven't dated in years, but chances are women my age might be starting to want kids, so I either have to sift through for the ones who also want to stay kidless, or I date a 20-something-year-old who also just wants to travel and have fun in life. But then again, the 20-something-year-old will want to have kids in the future. I think. Story 28. My boyfriend of 2 years and I have an amazingly rare relationship. I'll be 24 in a couple weeks, and he turned 34 this year. We met when I was 20 and he was 30 and got together after a year and a half. He has a 9-year-old daughter who I met when she was 7, and he's divorced. I have no kids and don't biologically want any. Was in college and I was never married. Although we were at different points in life, we were deeply in love. The kind where even after 2 years, it still feels like we're in the honeymoon phase. We've never argued or had any big disagreements. Our morals, politics, views on religion, future plans, and intimacy needs align. He was worried about the age gap at first, but noticed that I wasn't as immature as other girls my age. My parents are 12 years apart, so age gaps never mattered to me. Like any other relationship, if you find the right person with the same values and outlook on life like yours, then go for it. Not all age gap relationships are toxic. Just make sure you're compatible and happy. Story 29. No, because both are consenting adults in legal age, it is nonsense to say people with an age gap cannot date for some illogical or conventional moral reasons. If a 21 has the mental capacity to drink, vote, and fight in the armed forces, then they are of sound enough mind to decide who they want to date. There's no philosophical argument that says dating older or younger people is unethical. And for everyone who says it is wrong, I challenge you to tell me why there shouldn't be some law that says only people of the same age can date one another. If a person who is 30 cannot date a 21-year-old, then the same can be said for the ages 22 to 29. In that case, only 21-year-olds can date each other and so forth. Obviously, that is absurd, which is the same as this strange sense of morality where people say no to this question. Story 30. I'll never understand the obsession with this topic. These are consenting adults. Let them make their own decisions. I'm not here for infantilizing 20-somethings as though they're utterly incapable of making any kind of responsible long-term decisions for themselves. People are complicated. I don't know these individuals. I can't possibly accurately guess their relationship dynamic or motivations. As long as everyone is legal and enthusiastically participating, I don't care to comment. Story 31. That depends on a variety of factors. Maturity level back then with boomers was very different than they are today. Many were literally full-grown adults by the time they were out of high school with whole families, and often they were with people they knew for many years before they dated. There were age gaps nobody batted an eye at, unlike today where kids are still very much like children afraid to be adults. So I would tread lightly with a 21-year-old if I was still dating. They're not the 21-year-olds back then. Story 32. The rest of the internet might call you the creepiest person in the entire universe for this, since age gaps are suddenly a hot-button topic. But the way I see it, I would likely not personally do it, but if 2 other consenting adults do it, I have absolutely no problem with it. I think for me personally, it would be hard to connect with someone that much younger than me, but I never understood why people have issues with consenting adults and age gaps if there was no power leveraging involved. Story 33. As a 33-year-old, a 21-year-old feels like it is only a small step up from a child. I'm sure a 50-year-old looks the same way as a 30-year-old. You'd have to be incredibly immature and unaware or in denial about your own age, or selfish enough to take advantage of someone that hasn't spent enough time on the planet to learn from the mistakes yet. To date someone that much younger than you. 18 to 23 are some of the best years of your life while your fluid intelligence is at its peak. For you oldies, don't impact someone else's best years because your chance is gone now. Let it go. Stick to other crystallized intelligence people that are in the same boat as you. Story 34. Yes, it's weird. I'm generalizing here, but these are two completely different stages in life. Most people at 21 still don't know what they want and are doing a lot of trial and error in the dating scene. They are less likely to be financially stable, maybe still in college, and can recover from all-nighters like it's nothing. At 30, most people are planning roots or settling down, and they're likely to be more established in their career, which makes a big difference. Story 35. I pulled this quote from a quick Google search. In short, heterosexual men will find 20-year-old women most attractive regardless of how old they are. Women, on the other hand, tend to find men of a similar age to them most attractive, so as they get older, women will generally start to be into older men. I haven't really noticed anyone mentioning certain biological and sociological factors. There's hard research done on these topics, like how women are biologically more likely to become pregnant between their late teens into their late 20s. Younger men, sociologically speaking, aren't really that wealthy during their 20s on average and therefore can't really support a family as well as a 30-something. So in my opinion, based on easily found research, is that no, it shouldn't be abnormal for a 30-something to date a 20-something. I, personally, as a 30-something heterosexual male, can say that I am attracted to 20-something females. Not sure if I would ever date one, but that's because I've been with my current partner for over 7 years and don't plan on it ever ending. But hypothetically speaking, I found that age of girls attractive, so it's pretty obvious how my biology would answer that question if given the option. Story 36. I would say a bit weird, but if you're both happy, go for it. The thing is, as you become older, in my opinion, age doesn't matter so much. There's a 12-year difference between my sister and her husband. He's older, but also I was crazy and fell for her. Granted, I didn't want to have feelings for him. An 18-year-old guy and I, female, I'm 29. We worked together, so talked often. Yeah, maturity difference. But in some ways, he was better in regards to being chill. I overthink, and that ruined it. I know 18 is an adult, but a lot of people will also say, that's still a teenager. Which I know is true and a heck of a lot weirder than 21. So you do you and screw what other people think as long as you're not forceful. Story 37. No, 9 years isn't even that big of an age difference. I've met immature or doesn't act their age 30-year-olds, and I met the inverse for 21 years. Even if they aren't how the average 21-year or 30-year-olds behave, who's to say two mature people or immature people of those ages can't date or become a relationship? We all have benchmark behavior we accept from a typical 21-year-old, but for typical 30-year-olds, it's all in the by 30 you should category. Different phases of life are different for some people, sure, but that isn't much better than saying love at first sight isn't real. If 1% of long-term couples are love at first sight, it's real. People also age too. At 27 or 28 with 36 or 37, no one ever cares anymore. It's just you're dating an older person. Story 38. Yeah, and if you're 30, you know why. If you're 21, I'm already in my mid-20s and I've gained so much wisdom in the short period of adulthood. Looking back at 21, I was more submissive because my ex made my decisions for me. I didn't know how to be independent as I do now. I didn't recognize red flags like I do now. And even at 25, I still wouldn't go after a 21-year-old. They barely became an adult. Sure, they're not high schoolers, but they have so much life they need to live. 30-year-olds already experienced their 20s and are usually ready to settle down and find a life partner, which shouldn't be a 21-year-old. Story 39. In my opinion, no. And I think from personal experience in the LGBT space, the extremely small dating pool often means there can be pretty big age gaps in those relationships because you have to be willing to sacrifice certain dimensions in order to not pass away alone. If you only like tall, athletic, blonde men who play video games and are the same age as you, your dating pool is probably 1 to 2 people unless you live in a massive city. So you have to expand that. Any hair color, any height, any build, any age, etc. The list of requirements grows shorter as your willingness to compromise increases out of necessity. But I also think that due to being less likely to have children, less likely to get married, and more likely to have trauma or mental illness that has delayed development, age gaps in the gay community don't seem to be quite as impactful as for straight people. I have no research to back this up, but just from personal experience, my conversations with gay people 10 years my junior versus 10 years my senior run pretty much identically because most gay people have a similar set of interests in a universal culture. Story 40. As a young-looking 30-year-old who just got out of a 2-year relationship with a 23-year-old, nobody ever said it was weird. I just had a difficult time talking to friends about our problems because most would just say, maybe she's just too young to get it. Before getting into the relationship, we used to be friends with benefits. She was pushing for a relationship, but I was concerned about the age gap, so after a few months, I finally gave in. Mostly because she seemed to be very well adjusted and not into partying or drinking. She also told me that she wasn't into that sort of stuff, so I thought we were all good since I'm trying to settle down. What it didn't account for, well, people tend to have friends in the same age group as them, and honestly, it was all drama you could think of at that age. Luckily, she got rid of the most toxic ones, but still, you just can't get rid of all your friends, so it was mostly drama after drama. In hindsight, though, there for sure was a huge gap in life experience. She just wasn't as mature as I thought in the beginning. She put on a pretty good face for the first year of the relationship, but afterward, it just came out more and more. The biggest factor in hindsight was her struggle to communicate with me about issues, concerns, or problems. She didn't really grasp the concept of, hey, whatever it is, we talk to each other, and then we together figure out a solution or resolution. Us versus the issue. It mostly ended up in you versus me and no resolution or solution, which mostly means that we ended up having some fights that could have just been discussions. I also would like to say that I was her first real adult relationship, or let me rephrase it. It was her first relationship with an adult. And I think at that age, you have to take that into consideration. But that is a real possibility. So you're pretty much trying to date a toddler in terms of experience in that frontier. But in the end, it always depends on yourself and the other person. As long as you're on the same wavelength, you can make it work. Story 41. It is going to completely depend on the level of maturity of the 21-year-old. It can be really freaking weird, or it can be completely fine. For me, as a 31-year-old, would most likely not date someone that young just because where you are going to be in life at these two ages are most likely going to be wildly different, and interest may not really align. However, if I meet the one and that person happens to be in their early 20s, then I wouldn't let the age gap alone be the deciding factor. Story 42. Yes, I would question why the 30-year-old can't find someone their own age. Well, it's not that, it's just that they're attracted to people younger than them. Okay, now I'm wondering, what is it about younger people they find so attractive? Their good looks, their naivety, their total lack of grown-up problems and expectations? Something, biology, something, in their prime. Now I'm wondering why they feel the need to justify themselves under the shaky idea of biology and evolution. At best, it tells me the 30-year-old is very immature, and at worst, they are a creep. And yes, before anyone gets their back up, I apply this to women as well. Story 43. A 21-year-old is just starting out, barely out of school, maybe even still studying, hasn't even started their career yet, still in the middle of their post-teen or early adult development. A 30-year-old, on the other hand, is already busy advancing in their career, in a completely different stage of development, most likely already settled. These two people are in very different stages, mentally, physically, and financially. Building a healthy relationship in this is a challenge. I would not advise dating. Many people would frown upon it. If both of you are okay with it, then that is fine. I wouldn't. I'm 22 right now, and the lowest I would consider dating is 19, for above reasons. Story 44. I used to have a 22-year-old girlfriend when I was 32. There were more differences in regards to maturity than I'd initially anticipated. If I was again in that situation, I don't think I would go for it. 32 and 42, on the other hand, I would immediately do. I think after the late 20s, there's not much of a maturity and compatibility anymore. Obviously, it always depends on the actual person, but that's what I had noticed with my former girlfriend and her friends. Story 45. First off, I'm 40. I had my confidence, self-esteem, self-outlook completely and totally obliterated by my ex-wife of 16 years. I don't mean to sound conceited, but I know when I was younger, I was very handsome. I've been doing online dating. For some reason, I keep getting 20-something-year-old girls that are interested or want to go on a date. I went on a date with a couple of them, but the generational gap was just too much. It does make you feel good, though, as a man who's been through hell and completely eviscerated, to realize you can still date a young, hot 20-year-old if you choose to do so. I do not want to date someone probably with another child because I have an 8-year-old boy, someone who gets a sense of humor and can actually have an intellectual conversation. Story 46. What's weird is that we as a society have determined that 18 is acceptable, yet people still try to push their morality on you for no reason. As long as you weren't power leveraging this person or lying in wait, just date them. You'll both have your fun, and then eventually you'll probably decide, God dang, never doing that again. A 21-year-old is fully capable of choosing who they can date and make life decisions. Any denying this is infantilizing them and just blatantly wrong. Story 47. It really depends on the individuals. Maturity levels, emotional maturity of the people involved, what stage of life you're at, what you're doing with your life, work, study, or all that stuff matters more. I feel like you can find extremely mature 21-year-olds or very immature ones, just as you can find very mature 30-year-olds or borderline childish ones. I could never pass judgment unless I met the people in question. Personally, for me though, I'm closer to 30 than 21, and in my mind, that's a millennial and Gen Z person dating. I really have so little in common with the younger Gen Z individuals due to our different outlooks on life and the way we grew up and the environments that shaped us. I could make an exception, but it would be rare. Story 48. Depends on what you want from the relationship. People will jump and say, what in common you have with her? Or, ew, she's 2/3 of your age. But to be honest, 21 plus age women are more beautiful than ever and more girly. Older women will demand more things from you because of their biological clock. Sometimes this behavior can be too much for guys that don't want that kind of compromise. Be happy in your own way. Just be careful not to hurt anyone. Story 49. I always say 18 to 22 is called baby adults. It's a perfect age for weirdos to go after younger people. I was the 19-year-old that dated a 26-year-old, and it was creepy. I was so smitten to see it at the time, but I look back now with nothing but regrets. He wasn't a bad guy, but he definitely was weird. 21-year-olds don't really know the world as much as they want to believe they do. They'll swallow their "I'm mature for my age" words really quickly by the time they turn 25. It really comes down to what do you guys have in common. Probably not a lot. There's a big difference in maturity from college age to people who have already done the college thing and have been working for years. It really comes down to maturity. I know it feels like I'm babysitting when I go out with my Gen Z friends. Everyone I know changes a lot between those baby adult years. While someone who's 30 might be set more in their ways, not changing as much. You want to date someone that will grow with you, not someone who will change before your eyes. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.